From pushing people around to diving in sewage, stay tuned to number 1 to find out the worst job in the world. Number 10. Pusher. Their job is to push, and push they do. To kick off our list, let's start with one of the weirdest yet necessary jobs on the planet. Although the official term for this job is railway station attendant, nobody calls them that, probably not even their own managers. To everyone, they're simply pushers. Okay, so what are they? Well, just imagine for a second the subway crowd, trying to squeeze into the next train like wild beasts. Can you see it? Great. Now, what does a pusher do? He simply pushes passengers onto a train, enabling the door to close up and the train to move on. That's the whole job, but it's absolutely necessary. Humans are a funny kind. If we see that a subway door cannot close, very few of us would give up and actually step off the train. Plus, the crowds in major cities are so huge it's absolutely impossible to rely on passengers' logic and empathy during the boarding process. Enter the pusher. Without them, subway trains would probably never leave, with dozens of passengers stuck in the doors. I really admire your job, but you act kinda pushy, don't you think? Number 9. Bering Sea Fisherman. Before we move on, take a moment to like this video. While you're there, click the subscribe button for more videos from Zero to Hero. Don't forget to click that little notification button too. Do you remember the George Clooney movie The Perfect Storm? It's about a group of fishermen who end up facing a monster of a storm and, well, let's not spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. Although it's probably a little bit exaggerated for poetic license, the truth is, life of a fisherman is really that hard. I mean, like super hard, especially in the Bering Sea. First of all, the weather is just terrible. Forget the romantic idea of a fisherman under the sun with a breeze for a friend and sing-alongs to pass the time. Nope, this is really hard work, under the worst of climate conditions. Boats continuously get hit by huge waves. The air is water-soaked and the wind blows wild. Sure, the pay can be really good, but in order to qualify, you need great physical strength and a mind strong enough to endure the elements. This one easily fits into the category, not for the faint of heart. I'll definitely skip this one. Number 8. Manure Inspector. Okay, here's another funny one. Although you won't believe many of the jobs on our list, they actually all exist, including Manure Inspector. The job is fairly simple to do and to explain, but that doesn't make it any less gross. The job of a manure inspector is to, well, inspect manure. Duh. In order to be properly used as fertilizer, manure has to be of good quality, but there's nothing to it, you'd say. It's just manure. Well, it turns out it's not that simple after all. There are strict guidelines as to what kind of manure can be used, since it should also be clean in its own special way. Therefore, a manure inspector has to collect specimens from animals and conduct all sorts of tests to make sure it's up to par. This involves searching stool for blood, bacteria, and the like. It might be well paid, but it's not the nicest of jobs. Number 7. Roadkill Collector. Now, here's a job that's definitely not for everyone. So many of us absolutely adore animals, either as pets or at the zoo. And we cannot bear the sight of a sick or feeble-looking animal, let alone one that's splattered on the road. But unfortunately, roadkills happen every single day. Most of them don't happen on purpose. It's simply just too hard to hit the brakes in time to avoid the worst. Many drivers get scared and panic. And instead of trying to avoid the hit, they accelerate and run over some poor innocent animal. And when that happens, somebody's got to clean up all the mess. And that is the roadkill collector. The job of a roadkill collector is basically to locate the dead animal, remove it from the site, and dispose of it later on. Roadkill collectors see all kinds of animals during their tenure, not just cats and dogs, as you would imagine, but there are also bears, wolves, moose, elk, kangaroo, all sorts of animals. But if you're an animal lover, look at it this way. At least you don't have to do it. Number 6. Hazmat Diver. Yes, it sounds awesome, no doubt about it. It sounds like a superhero. What do you do, man? I'm a hazmat diver. but it's definitely not that awesome. The name hazmat is a coined term coming from hazardous materials, and the job of a hazmat diver is to safely remove hazardous materials of all types, which unfortunately makes this one of the most awful, most dirty, most disgusting jobs around. Every day, a lot of material waste goes into the planet's waters, and the environment is heavily polluted. Think of poisonous chemicals, oil spillages, defunct sewage pipes, and so on. You probably get the idea. It's extremely filthy, and more so, it's a grave health risk. Hazmat divers don their special rubber suits and go to work. Their tools, among other things, include special underwater vacuum cleaners, airlifts for hoisting leaking barrels, and the like. Their suits and equipment are top-notch, but one small hole pierced into their suit can make room for all kinds of toxins and bacteria. No doubt about it, this is one dangerously awful and awfully dangerous job. How was work, honey? Oh, fine. I swam a little in some hazardous liquids, same old, same old. Number 5. Morgue Worker. This job has been around ever since the dawn of man, and it's probably going to stick around well into the future, at least until they discover a way to create immortality. Although most of us couldn't bear the sight of a deceased person, there are people who are in daily contact with dead bodies, and they do it for a living. It's a tough gig, but as they say, somebody's got to do it. Morgue workers are in charge of handling and cleaning the corpses. These people help during autopsies, preparing dead bodies for the procedure, which sometimes includes organ disposal, and they handle all the work on the body once an autopsy is finished. There is a strict training program for all morgue workers, and in addition to this, the job requires a lot of physical and mental strength and a high level of stress tolerance because, come on, you're practically looking death in the eye. No thank you. I think I'd rather sell hot dogs in the park. Number 4. Sewer Swimmer. Okay, this is not the official job title, but I'm sure they're known by that nickname. The technical term is sewer cleaner, but in order to clean it, well, you're gonna have to swim in it, pal. This job is present in underdeveloped and developing countries in the world, such as India. Remember, we're talking about countries with massive populations, and one of the greatest challenges there is maintaining optimal levels of hygiene. And that is where the sewer swimmers step in. In order to clear up clogged sewer pipes, these guys need to be neck deep in the worst of waste matter and do their best to clear up the mess. And the mess is plentiful. The tools used are quite primitive: sticks, broom handles, an occasional metal scraper, and more often than not, bare hands. The pay is minimal, the health risk is enormous, and the prospects are not good. All in all, one of the worst jobs this side of the solar system. Feel free to pass. Number 3. Renderer. I know what you're thinking, but this has nothing to do with computers. It's not that kind of rendering. This is actually pretty gross. This rendering involves converting animal tissue into usable materials. The workplace? Your local slaughterhouse. The stench? Unbearable. The atmosphere? Miserable. Rendering can be done for both edible and industrial products, but both processes are quite disgusting and very, very dirty. Imagine piles of lifeless animal bodies lying around, ready to be cut into pieces. After the cutting up routine, the meat is taken to fine shredding, after which comes the best part: cooking the meat in order to melt the bones and make a hot soup out of it. Now, the last step varies depending upon the end need, but that's the basics. Pretty gross, don't you think? Well, imagine doing it for a living. One must have quite a stomach for it. If I had to spend a day doing this, I would probably go vegan on the spot. Number 2. Miner. The last 2 of our entries are pretty common jobs, but in no way does that mean that they don't deserve to be here. On the contrary, maybe they're not so gross, but they are definitely the worst jobs on the planet. Mining is not the worst just in terms of the location, but also the actual physicality required for it. In order to be a miner, you really have to work hard, physically, and be able to take in long hours and terrible working conditions. And on top of everything, there's the danger part. Mining is an extremely dangerous job, so dangerous that some countries don't even offer any kind of insurance in case of injury. A miner is almost always in the cold, dark, and damp, spending hours on end lying down or squatting in unbearably desperate situations. And the fatality rate is almost 6 times higher than other jobs. A miner is literally risking his life and breaking his back, depending on the country, the pay can be really good. All in all, mining is reserved for those who are up for the challenge. Number 1. Soldier. In order to understand why soldier is number 1 on our list, try to think outside the Hollywood box for a moment. Sure, being a soldier can be an honorable job, but that's beside the point. The fact of the matter is that soldiers don't just stand the risk of getting killed on the job. Their job is, in a way, to put themselves in situations where they could be killed. It's right there in the job description. No one wants to get killed, but come hell or high water, soldiers have to go into battle and risk their life. On top of this, there are months and sometimes even years of living away from your country, family, and friends in an unknown land with unfamiliar people and customs where nothing feels right. If you want to become a soldier, you need to have a lot of stamina, an iron mind, a strong body, and nerves of steel. And you must be prepared to die, since it comes with the job. It's all great when you're playing first-person shooter games, but go talk to a veteran, and you'll see that the reality is quite different. Being a soldier is rough, tough, and often tragic. It's definitely the worst job in the world, and let's all hope for a world where soldiers would be redundant. Tell us your thoughts on the worst jobs in the comments below, and take care.